Previously, we looked at the dangers of taking the driver out of the driving loop and then expecting them to take over when an automated system fails. And we've looked at the tragic example of the Uber crash in Arizona, where the automated system was having trouble recognizing a pedestrian that was crossing the street. And while there was a safety driver, the safety driver did not take over because they were distracted watching a video or TV show on their phone. And so without their distraction, of course, the police report stated that the accident would have been entirely avoidable. And that's the problem with partially automated systems, is that relying on the driver to take over is not reliable. So what are the solutions? Well, one, of course, solution is to go totally driverless, take out the driver completely. But unfortunately, the technology for that is not here yet. The other solution, you could say, is we don't take the driver out of the loop. Basically, we keep the driver in the loop and have a system follow kind of a concept called adaptive automation, shared control. So the idea being that you don't think about, okay, there's the driver driving, there's the machine driving. It's rather a gradient where the machine and the driver share control. Now, what do we mean by sharing the control or sharing the automation? Well, first we have to think about the degree of automation, which is usually broken down into 4 stages. So there is information acquisition, information analysis, decision and action selection, and action implementation. So gathering information, analyzing it, deciding what to do, and then doing it. And we know that the drivers have trouble, if they have trouble anywhere, they have trouble with the acquisition, analysis, and the decision making. Right? When we looked at the reasons why drivers cause crashes, a lot of that had to do with recognition, right, which is the information acquisition, information analysis, and then decision, which is basically deciding what action to take. So the troublesome stages, you can say, is 1, 2, and 3. And we can't really share. It would be nice if we could augment someone's brain, but of course we don't really have that technology either. So in many ways, current systems that have potential for this adaptive automation idea, automate everything, stage 1, 2, and 3, and then the sharing, they come together with the driver basically at stage 4, the action implementation. What does that look like? Well, take an example system, something like a lane keeping system. So the driver looks at the road, right, sees the lane, and will try to stay in the middle. A lane keeping system will look at the road, let's say using a camera, will identify the lanes, will figure out where the lanes are, where the vehicle is, and then decide, does it need to turn this way or this way to keep the vehicle in the middle, and then it will actually try to turn the vehicle in that direction. So then, driver makes that analysis, the system makes that analysis, and they come together. And in one research paper example, basically the way they come together is the driver can, of course, apply force on the steering wheel to turn, and the system can apply a force on the steering wheel to turn. Now, what that creates is the ability for the driver to actually feel what the system is trying to do. And if they don't like it, they can override. And part of that whole thing can also be the system monitoring the driver. And if the driver is not responding, if the driver is not, doesn't seem to be in the loop, then maybe the system can take greater control to, let's say, keep the vehicle in the lane. And so you don't take out the driver completely and then have them be able to come back right away. You have this gradient of how much the driver is involved and how much the system is involved. And the nice result of this is that in general, in these research studies about adaptive automation, basically it was found that the drivers feel better about this kind of system. They can, you could say it eliminates some of these problems we've looked at with automation. Then it maybe helps them have a better mental model of what the system is actually doing, right? It prevents them from becoming, let's say, overly reliant on the system, because they can't. They have to be in the loop. They have to stay in the loop. They can't just completely tune out. And of course, it does keep them in the situation. It does not allow them to get completely distracted and then come back and say, "Oh, what's happening?" So it smooths out some of the problems that we have with these partial automation systems. Of course, the problem is that it's not as fun, right? You still have to be driving. It may be safer, and that's very good, but you cannot it's not the dream of, well, I'm commuting to work and I want to play or watch videos on YouTube. You still have to be doing the driving part. So, but until we get to driverless, if we want to just keep increasing the safety and then have the convenience, then continuing with adaptive automation to improve the safety of these systems, I think, is the way to go. One little interesting fact about adaptive automation, about this kind of area of research, that the general analysis found that a system needs to have at least a reliability of 70% to help. Which is kind of interesting, meaning if the system has 70% reliability or better, then that system plus the person will work better than, let's say, the person alone. And of course, you could say probably better than the system alone itself too. There's just kind of a very kind of interesting number. I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but it shows you that even an imperfect system working with a human can produce a much better result than just a human alone. So that we should not be giving up on automation altogether. But unfortunately, on the way to the glorious driverless future, where we have no driver-caused accidents, no driver-caused fatalities, we have to be very careful with these intermediate systems and with relying on the driver to be the safety backup.